More than that is, the reality is these people exist. They're here, they're in our community, they contribute to what we consider a good community. And just because it does not reflect that majority does not justify our ignoring it or our declining to extend a protection to them. What it is an omission. It's an omission. It's ignoring that they're there, ignoring that they are part of our community. But if when we decline to extend protection to people that need it, that are underrepresented in our community, it qualifies that right. And when we qualify somebody else's right, we qualify our own. It says that our rights to employment, to housing, to whatever issue we're speaking of, is only valid within certain particular times, locations, and circumstances. So I would ask, for us not to accept that paradigm of what rights mean, especially something as fundamental as employment, that I ask you, Madam Mayor, council members, to be willing to extend this protection in employment to a highly underrepresented, highly marginalized, and highly discriminated against portion of our community. It validates them as members of our community, and more importantly, it validates them as people. It validates our own rights to protect them and extend that right and that protection and employment to them. Thank you for taking the time to consider this, and I appreciate so much the City of Moscow that it can be a safe haven for people of the LGBT community, and I appreciate that you guys take the charge of being responsible for those rights seriously, and that you do it with grace. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Joanne Manita, 203 South Howard in Moscow, and I'm chair of the Latah County Human Rights Task Force. It's hard to say anything more eloquent than has already been said, but I wanted to say that what we're asking in this expansion of protection is not going to affect the average citizens of Moscow. It's only a promise of non-discrimination on the part of the city. But it does set an example for others, because they look to their city as a guide and as something to be proud of. And it is also an example to the rest of the state that there are only 5 communities now that have protection for sexual orientation, and Moscow is one of them. I would like to say, since that's been added to the Moscow Code, the protection for sexual orientation, it has only enhanced the reputation and the livability of our community. It hasn't hurt anybody. And I think being a little more specific and adding this particular group of people, the transgender, will only enhance our reputation, enhance our protection, enhance our well-being, and make us a more welcoming community. I would like to repeat what someone said. This is not a special right for people who are transgendered. If there's no discrimination, then they're equal with everybody else. It's just protecting them from being discriminated against. The testimony we heard from Emily from Boise is something I've heard before, of people who struggle with this their whole lives, and they're afraid to make the change until they're ready to retire, and then they make a change. Why didn't they do it sooner? It's because they're afraid of losing their jobs. And I think that means they've gone through their whole life hiding and in struggle and in conflict. And by allowing a protection for people like that, we tell them it's all right to live who they are, be who they are, and that will make us all better people. So I urge that you add this classification, because it won't cost anything and it will mean a lot to many. Thank you. Thank you, Joanne. Are there any others here tonight who'd like to speak on this subject?
My name is Ken Fons. I live at 412 East Morton in Moscow, and I'm the chair of the Moscow Human Rights Commission. And Tim did a wonderful job speaking for our position. What I just wanted to reiterate that and also thank you, Madam Mayor, and City Council, and City Supervisor, and others for considering this issue. I believe it's an important issue, and I agree with you. Moscow does not discriminate, and I think we can be proud of the fact that we don't, and that none of you do, and that you won't stand for it. The issue I see is that perhaps down the line in the future, that may not necessarily be true. We have no idea who will take what positions as time goes on. This could change as a result of this, and while the existing language may cover this sort of thing, adding this little bit, this piece, will not hurt us in the long run. It will protect things for the future, and it definitely will show Moscow as an inclusive city and mean an immense amount to groups of people, that they will be protected, that they are recognized, that they're not left out. Because we can say they're not, but if that wording is not there, how do they know that for sure? And so this kind of reinforces that point, and I believe also that it really doesn't hurt us, it doesn't cost us anything, and it can only help us in the future. And so I just wanted to reiterate that and state that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
David Pierce, 716 East F Street. I've sat here listening to this, and I agree with everything that's been said, but I still felt there was one thing I wanted to remind the council of. This is a specific thing that we're asking for here tonight. And I would remind this council and everybody who's sitting up here in the front that it was not so long ago when we did not have a specific word in our ordinances, in our charter, which prevented us, or which caused us great problems and many, many arguments here in front of this council and in front of our commissions. Therefore, I think it is absolutely a wonderful idea for us to put this specific thing in our ordinances, in our policies, so we don't have to deal with that kind of a situation in this circumstance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Anyone else? We did hear from our city supervisor and city attorney at the administrative committee on this topic, and I think the gist of that discussion was essentially that there's some sense that existing language pertaining to sexual orientation and gender covers this, but adding the additional language about actual or perceived gender identity and expression would not injure the existing policy. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's a fair depiction of my comments to administrative committee were that I believe the umbrella language will allow the city to continue its non-discrimination practices even to this extent, but that adding the additional language certainly would not injure the policy at all.
As I showed this draft resolution to my husband at breakfast yesterday morning, and he compared it to the 2004-16 resolution, which is presently in effect and influencing our existing personnel policy, he immediately picked up on the fact that the "be it resolved" section of this previous document that we suspect oversees our existing policy leaves out pregnancy, ancestry, veteran status, in addition to sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, or characteristics. And so there were some, I think, unintentional oversights. As I recall, I was on that city council that passed that resolution, and certainly I did not intend that we were not effectively resolving that we were not going to discriminate against those parties. I mentioned to my husband that were we to have a group of veterans or a group of pregnant women come forward, we would certainly make that clarification and that intent known very explicitly in this document. While I can appreciate the council recognizes that we in the city of Moscow do not discriminate and would not discriminate, and this council is not of the inclination to want to discriminate against people on whatever basis, that I still would urge your consideration of adding this specific language that would not hurt and would help a lot. I'd turn it over to you for discussion. Tom?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very moved by all the comments that we've heard tonight. I've been very supportive of including this language all along, and I'm glad that we had a unanimous recommendation from the Human Rights Commission. I feel that this is an important piece, if for no other reason, to be specifically clear and to make sure that we, as the City Council, set forth a clear policy in the personnel practices of the City of Moscow. So I'd be happy to actually make a motion to approve the resolution to amend the city's equal rights or equal opportunity employment policy.
Okay, I have a motion. And not hearing a second, we'll carry on our conversation. Anybody else want to talk about this? Wayne?
I want to thank Kim. Tremendous job. Thank you very much. Ken, I've always appreciated everything that you've done with the Human Rights Commission, as well as totally appreciating the Human Rights Commission themselves. This is going to be very difficult for me to express myself, because the year that I was the liaison for the council with Human Rights Commission caused me to grow tremendously. I will tell you that I have a favorite niece that would also be encouraging me to want to change the resolution. But I have some concerns. And my first question, and I would ask the audience for a raise of hands, in the 2004-16 resolution, where the first one is, whereas it is the policy of the City of Moscow, how many know what that says? The problem that I see in including this in there, including a gender identity clause or wording within this whereas clause, is that nobody will remember it. It doesn't solve the problem of discrimination. Discrimination is in the mind. The City of Moscow already says all persons or entities, sexual orientation, or any other basis. The purpose of a whereas clause and the purpose of a resolution is to encompass in generalities all of the populace, which it does. I don't feel that it's necessary, and I'm going to use the term special interest groups, to include special interest groups in this, because I don't know where that would stop. And I think I'm completely convinced in my own mind that we have it covered, and that the City of Moscow will not discriminate against anybody for any reason that's lawful. I made the comment at the administrative meeting that one of the worst things that I can see in my life is bullying. Because as a small child, I faced a lot of bullying as I grew up. Whatever reason it might be, it's not right. So let me make this very clear statement. As long as I'm on the City Council, and I think I can speak for all of my fellow councilmen as well as the mayor, we will never accept any type of discrimination or bullying or intimidation in the City of Moscow. Not in our town, not in my town. It's criminally negligible to allow that, and it's up to law enforcement to enforce our laws when people are discriminated against, especially if they are assaulted or battered in any way. I believe that by changing this resolution It would give us a false sense of security. It would not accomplish what you truly want to accomplish. And that's why I do not support changing that resolution.
Okay, Wayne, I did want to make just one clarification. You were partially accurate in the part of this recitation that you cited, but in fact it says that the city does not discriminate against its employees or applicants because of, and then a long list, and it says, or any other basis prohibited by local, state, or federal law. So if we don't explicitly say it in our local law, and it is not included in our state or federal law, then it's up to us to put that language in there. And so that it was, you just abbreviated that statement. It's not prohibited on any other basis, but it's prohibited on any other basis prohibited by local, state, or federal law. Other discussion, Dan?
You know, Wayne spoke pretty eloquently there, and I appreciate it greatly. To me, and maybe I'm just seeing the silver lining or whatever, but the city of Moscow believes that all persons are entitled to equal employment opportunity and does not discriminate. That there says enough for me right there. I don't care what anything says after that. That's all that matters to me. When you enumerate the differences, you're pointing them out, and to me that's just another form of discrimination. You know, it's unintentional discrimination, of course, but just by pointing out and being specific, you're discriminating against that person unintentionally with, you know, trying to do the right thing, but you're pointing out the differences where, you know, I spoke today with somebody that talked about how they have a sister that is very liberal in their feelings and in their politics, and they talk about how they were at a dinner party or something, or just at dinner with their, and this person was going over all her friends, and you know, that's the Japanese couple. There's my friends. That is the Russian couple. They're my friends. That's the black couple that are my friends. Why did she feel the need to enumerate, to specify who those people were, rather than just saying, these are my friends? That's all that matters to me. These are persons that are all entitled to equal employment. We do not discriminate against anyone.
So Dan, just a question for you. Do you believe that gender identity and expression are covered under the sexual
I do.
orientation laws?
I think you could strike out everything after employees. I don't think the city of Moscow discriminates. I know for a fact, and I don't want to name names because people have right to privacy, but we've had a transgender person working for this city that just recently left for greener pastures, and I don't know of any, unless somebody can tell me of something, of any discrimination that person felt in the job that they had. So we got a problem, we got a solution here searching for a problem that we don't have in the city of Moscow.